Can you give me like 10 seconds? I need to set up
Mm,
OBS.
yeah.
Can anyone say anything, please?
Hey, hey.
Yep, works.
Yeah,
I
good.
think we're good. Yep.
All right. Hey, guys, welcome to the fifth community call. Uh, this call is going to be focused on governance. We have tons of stuff to go through there, at least two and a half proposals. And before we start talking about those, I also just want to spend like a few minutes on the governance roadmap I wrote a while ago uh, in December. Uh, a link to the post in the governance general chat. So if you go in there, you can see the link, which links to announcements. So in that post, what I'm basically trying to do is to uh, call to the community that now is the time for the Ren community to organize and start a proper DAO. Um, it was always been the intention of the Ren team to decentralize the protocol. Back in the old days, the concept of DAO was pretty new, so we didn't know about it. But now, as the whole community, like the crypto community, has moved forward, the concept of a DAO is pretty well known, and it's something that people recognize as being a valuable structure for governing a protocol. Exactly how a DAO is structured that varies depending on different organizations. MakerDAO looks one way, Compound, Uniswap, they have a different way of doing things. And the Ren DAO that isn't existing yet, that will also look in some kind of unique way, depending on sort of our community and what our protocol is, which is Ren, which is different from a lot of different Ethereum DAOs. Uh, so what we see now is that sort of to really bring Ren to sort of get Ren to reach its full potential, it needs a DAO to govern things like protocol changes, community treasury stuff, uh, just managing the community as a whole, finding ways to incentivize building certain things in the ecosystem. All of these things, they should be governed in a decentralized manner by a DAO. It should not be something that a centralized team, controls. Even if it could be more efficient that a centralized team controls many of these things, uh, to actually sort of gain trust in the wider ecosystem, you need to have these things decentralized. Uh, there's like no controversy about this. That something that's governed in a decentralized manner, there's people trust that more than some centralized team. Even if it's like even if you have a team full of the most honorable, great people, uh, there's still a lot of sort of yeah. If you want to get an integration or something like that, it can often come down to just is this decentralized? Are there time locks in the contracts that are governed by token holders? There's no like person that has a admin key that can change something. All of these things about them. We have to decentralize them over time. And this year will be big for Ren. We're gonna decentralize a lot of things. Maybe the aside from the treasury, like one of the biggest things is gonna be the gray core. I mean that's definitely gonna be launched somewhere this year. And while the team initially manages those members, that's gonna be the community who governs the gray core and whether the gray core should be disbanded in the future. That's something that's up to the community because yeah, this has to be the community dark nodes or community members have to decide who gets to be in the gray core and when we should eventually transition away from the gray core if we want to do that. So definitely super important things. So the team definitely is trying to call to action the community members to start joining and organizing, and if you can, start getting involved in governance discussions that we're having now. anyone who's joins now, like you're gonna be in the Ren history books for sure. We have maybe the most important thing to start with, which is the treasury. Um, treasury make the treasury is what sort of organizes all the other things. So we need to have this central key structure in place. Like who, how is the money in the protocol that's owned by the community? How is that managed? Who controls that? How are those funds spent and used and incentivized and put in liquidity pools? All of that stuff. It's super important, and we need to get that sorted now. So we have one proposal on that we're going to discuss this hour. Um, so definitely get involved in the treasury calls that we're having. We've had 3 calls already just on treasury. That's separate from the community calls. Get involved there. Read on the forum. This is what's gonna sort of like evolve Ren to the next stage. Is having this DAO helping out the team, building out the Ren ecosystem. Because the Ren team can only do so much, but with a DAO behind its back, or like with the DAO in front leading things, that can cause so much growth in the Ren ecosystem. So we really like hope that we can get this going. Um, so yeah, any comments or feedback on that before we move on? If anyone has any question, you can raise to speak uh, or write in the governance channel.
Well, I'm happy to voice my complete agreement with that. Since Ren has become mostly feature complete, it's only a matter of time with the level of functionality it's going to unleash into the blockchain ecosystem before it becomes a very noisy place. And just in terms of overall trustability with the multitude of platforms that are going to come and go, structuring it as a DAO from a management perspective, once feature complete has been reached, I think is going to be critical. Especially when you look at the risk of state attacks and legislation differences from one place to the next. Something like this really needs to be able to operate independently, in its own realm. So I think now is definitely the time. And here we are, all of us in this chat, willing to pitch in a hand. So this is very good to see.
Thanks for that. Yeah, I'm glad I'm not the only one who thinks that way. um, yeah, super happy that you all guys are here right now. Uh, it shows that there's potential here.
And just to add to it, I'll throw my hat on the ring for. I mentioned it already in the general thread. I'm actually just surveying the responses from the community to Sabovi's RFC, to your RFC as well, Max, and DeFi Whiskey. I'm working on sort of the framework, very rough draft of the Constitution. I mentioned this before, but to me, I'm just wanted to let everybody in the community know there's multiple folks doing different things, and we're all committed to this. I second, third, the support of what you guys are saying as far as how needed this is, and the more decentralized this becomes, the better for the entire ecosystem. Obviously, in a mindful space, there's currently the draft I'm doing is heavily influenced by roots, and curves, and kind of like really heavyweights in the field. So that's for I'm able to incorporate as much community sentiment as I can based on the RFCs the community is given before kind of opening the draft, so that we can kind of move forward with the bigger framework that's obviously necessary for this year. But overall, just super excited to see the entire community here. The turnout, 24 members. I mean, this is super excited overall. Thank you all.
Great.
And
Thanks.
I'd want to just keep encouraging everyone to pitch in. Like, there's some people up here that are willing to spend some time and get some stuff done, but the more input, the more ideas, the more there's people out there that might be interested in how the governance stuff works, and might have some killer angles and ideas for it. So if that sounds interesting to you at all, or you got a little spare time to help out, just please get involved in those conversations and those calls.
Agreed.
I had a question, Max. From the DAO's perspective, if we're being tasked with, understanding the protocol and managing and running the protocol, does the team have a budget to run by? So, most organizations, companies, startups, everything comes down to the funds that are allocated to run it so that you understand what you're managing, right? So, for example, if we were to request an increase of staff or to increase, allocations for marketing for, third-party institutions and teams to, spread the good word and you know, make Ren more known in the community. Everything comes down to budgeting and funds. And so, is there any transparency that can be shared with the team, how much funding they have, how many people are there? Do we have the ability to increase that number with the funds that are available and allocation of that funds? The treasury only has so much in it, and there's a lot of great ideas into how to allocate that and to grow that. Certainly, some of it should probably go to marketing if there isn't already money slotted for that. And so, just understanding the DAO versus the treasury versus the team and the funding mechanisms of all of them, I think is something that is important to touch upon because it kind of helps define what the goals and priorities of this DAO should be. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Those, I mean, those points or questions are critical to organize and plan around this. So there's multiple parts to that question. I'll try breaking it down a bit. So, I mean, the Ren Labs organization, that's a separate organization that has funding to sustain development on Ren for a very long time. There's also great incentive for Ren Labs to be working on the Ren protocol, not only from sort of Ren allocations, but also on the future applications being built on top of the Ren layer 1, the most known right now, which is Catalog, which is the next, or sort of the second protocol that we're in parallel started up a new team that works on that. Uh, any work that's done on Catalog sort of has to be based on the idea that it can be implemented on the Ren protocol itself, and for that reason, there needs to be continued Ren protocol development. So that's one thing, and Ren Labs has plenty of funding sort of through Alameda and that structure that's been set up. So that there's no like a worry about funding in that regard. But I unfortunately I can't be transparent on what kind of sort of coffers we have. Um, but it certainly it has we have a long runway and we can create new teams to work on new projects and do more fundraising for new projects so it can sustain itself indefinitely. Um, that's one thing. The DAO can't sort of technically and legally and for other reasons can't sort of take over the Ren Labs organization. Those are separate entities. Ren Labs is independent. The Ren DAO entity is going to be a new entity. Or like, it's a new sort of structure that's built up that won't have, at least in the beginning, any sort of legal incorporation anywhere. We don't know how that will get sorted out in the future, how DAOs sort of actually sort of get recognized status, but at least informally, there is in a way like a Ren DAO, and we know what we talk about when we say the Ren DAO. We know which community we're talking about, so there's no question about who's the Ren DAO. It's the Ren community, those involved in governance and those who make the decisions. And that DAO will have it will have its own treasury. So right now we have something called the Community Ecosystem Fund, which it has some allowances on what it can do, but it hasn't been approved by the community to be thought of as the official treasury. Um, treasury itself will have to be sort of created from scratch. It can use the funds that are in the community ecosystem fund if the community approves it, uh, but it has to be something that the community organizes around and agrees upon what this treasury is, which is why, for instance, what DeFi Whiskey has been talking about is so important. We have to think long term for the DAO. How can the DAO itself budget ways to do all the things a DAO needs to do to operate? So yeah, protocol development, if that's something that the DAO will also be engaged in the future, it's one thing. Marketing, like HR, like recruiting new community members, recruiting new developers to work on Ren protocol, or recruiting like new applications to build upon Ren. Those are all things that, yeah, the Ren Labs organization does on its own, but now the Ren DAO can also do in parallel to it. So it can be two big forces working on the Ren ecosystem. Um, and yes, this treasury or the community ecosystem fund right now that's in the Ren community, it's small. It's expected to grow, um, of course, since it has revenue through volume that's uh, gone through the Ren protocol. There are different ways that this can grow as well, like doing yield farming on the downtime when no funding or when no funds are being allocated somewhere. So that's one thing, and another thing is that the DAO can try to make deals or increase like the dark node uh, portion that goes to the treasury instead. Like those are all different things, and then the Ren Labs organization is thinking of ways to increase um, funds in the Ren DAO. This can't be talked about openly at this moment. We will talk about it later, but there's definitely ways. I can't really talk about it, but ways in which like Catalog can help out with um, funding in the Ren DAO, because Catalog will need to be uh, I mean, that's in a way going to be a separate entity, like maybe even a separate DAO, but that the uh, catalog community and etc. needs to be in a good sort of tight cooperation with the Ren DAO. So there's certainly ways in which the catalog will need to incentivize Ren DAO to be, so yeah, working together um, to do, to accomplish stuff together, and everything, like any volume that's going through catalog is also volume going through Rendao. So that there's ways in which like there's definitely going to be an increased revenue going to the Rendao's treasury in the future, um, through different means, and there might be like, yeah, might be other mechanisms that Ren Labs organization can employ, but I can't answer those like right now, unfortunately.
Thank you for that. It's certainly helpful, and certainly from the DAO's perspective, I think it kind of makes sense to help clearly define the roles that Ren Labs has versus the Ren DAO, right? So that we aren't wasting our time on things that they're focusing on and focusing on things that they aren't focusing on, right? Things that can help grow our volume or help market the product, or things that we can do with what we have effectively, and kind of leave them on a separate track.
But it's certainly in our interest as well that the Ren DAO is independent and can work on all the same things that the Ren Labs organization does. Of course, having protocol developers that are sort of super, it would be very difficult to find like protocol developers through Ren DAO to sort of do work on the Ren protocol right now, especially because it's only the Ren Labs organization that have the people that are experts on this protocol, and uh, so yeah. Also, when it comes to funding, it's pretty expensive to hire protocol developers. They're very sought after in the whole crypto ecosystem. But in the future, when all of the code and that is open source, and there's this growing sort of community knowledge about the protocol, how it works on the fine detail, there will be likely, like, young people that are interested in crypto, and computer science that will sort of learn about how the REM protocol works and might sort of start contributing open source to it. And they are valid people or potential people that the Ren DAO could hire to have a separate development team. So the DAO, for instance, can make sure that some new technical feature is added to the protocol without sort of relying on the Ren Labs organization to do it if the Ren Labs organization is working on something other in that time that it finds be more important. So there can be combined forces to get things done. Um, and
Max, and if you could correct me, but just to add to this, because I've been doing a lot of research on this, my feeling, and please correct me if I'm wrong, is for the Ren DAO, it must be to operate and to create a framework of governance as if we don't depend on Ren Labs, which for all legal purposes we don't. It's and the best way I guess I can try to pitch in to help P Chang with his question is think of the DAO governance as parallel growth, right? And we can absolutely and we must focus on marketing, on the hiring eventually techs that the devs that can come and help. But we must not be limited to, we're not going to do this because Ren Labs is doing, because that would be obviously, that's a very short-term approach. Rather, we must be assuming for the longer term survivability of Ren VM that, hey, Ren DAO is everything. Now, if Ren Labs can pitch in and everything, that's amazing. Is Catalog DAO can pitch in even better, but that's going to happen at its proper time when they are ready to pitch in. But for the purposes of this call and governance and what's coming and the treasury and everything, we must just assume, hey, no, Ren DAO is it. Like, this is what it's going to be. I might be wrong, though. Please, Max, do correct me if I'm wrong on that perspective and the approach as we gear up to do this.
no, I mean that's exactly right. Uh, of course, we don't want to think about a future where Ren Labs doesn't exist, but you can think about the
Of
Ren
course.
DAO as like it's something that can survive like the worst case scenario where the whole Ren Labs team is on an airplane and it crashes in the ocean. Like that kind of independence is what will ensure that the Ren ecosystem can continue on no matter the future. Uh, Continue on protocol development, making sure that everything is working smoothly, that our partners are getting the help they're getting to for the applications they have on top of Ren. Make sure Grey Core is running and all the dark nodes, like there's no funds lost. All of these things, um, in the end, they have to be sort of owned and controlled by the DAO. Even if the Ren Labs organization doesn't want to give out power, like I think you need to force that out of the Ren Labs hands eventually. You have to take control, because that's ultimately what's gonna ensure the future of the Ren protocol and the ecosystem. And it's what, yeah, it's gonna make, I mean, all of us happy in the end, I think. I don't know what
Max,
else. Yeah.
do you see the team, the rest of the team, as feeling the same way? I pictured a future in which the DAO and the Ren Labs team would have a fairly strong working relationship, but you're just brief describing it as eventually a struggle to wrest power from the team. Slightly alarming. Can you clarify that?
I think most of the team would agree. Maybe it's not what they thought, uh, or like what Tai and Long initially visualized when they founded Ren, but it's definitely something they could come to terms with. I think that this is eventually taken over by the community. Even if you want to control your baby that you've been developing for years, for the sake of like, if you have a child, eventually you have to let the child grow up and start moving out. And the same for a protocol like this. Um, it might be emotional for the team to give, and it might cause worry that some developer on the Ren team might feel like, oh, I'm not comfortable giving out this contract control to the community. What if something happens? But it has to eventually has to get to that point, even if they're not comfortable with it. And I don't think it's gonna be difficult. I think it's gonna be obvious for everyone that this is what has to be done. I don't think it's going to be a struggle, but there needs to be some pulling from the community to show that you're hungry and that you can take over something. Otherwise, the team might get lazy in its speed in which it gives over control to to the community. So I definitely encourage that there's some pulling from the community to help. If there's some community team member on Red Labs that's worried about this, while I'm not worried, well, you can help me out, convince them that this is the way um, for Ren.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks.
Do we know if Ren Labs has the authority or the capability of helping fund the DAO in any kind of capacity, or initiatives that are brought forth through RFCs or RIPs? Say that there is a good cause, or say that there is a just infrastructure that's needed to run an organization. You know, certainly you gotta pay people and do things, in order for actions and motivations to be aligned correctly. Is anything like that either feasible given the terms of the Alameda contract, or are all the funds from the Alameda contract? Are there any internal funds from the original ICO still available? Just trying to get some understanding on if any of that is even on the table or possible.
Yeah, it's definitely on the table and possible. There's just no sort of details I can hand out at this stage. But it's definitely something that's in the mind of Renland's organization, how to make sure that the money is there to bootstrap the DAO. Like certainly, like this is, I mean, otherwise, of course, you can't bootstrap a DAO without money. You can only run on the goodwill of the people for so long. Um, but there's just no like real details I can hand out right now. But I'm pushing for the community to get more funds. Certainly, like I hope we can do that. Um, so that I'm lobbying for that. But there's like no, yeah, nothing real I can say right now. But it's on the table for sure. Um,
So, what are ways that we, the community, can help you, Max, in those objectives, right? What would help us organize? What are some things that would present a narrative that would help the DAO have more structure? Or, do we need to break into smaller groups, which we've seen in other DAO organizations, like the Keeper DAO? They organize into various groups, and those groups are all in charge of various projects. Is something like that, like an outline of what that could look like, be beneficial? Or
yeah, like
anyone else have
definitely.
any questions on that line? I mean, I feel like I'm maybe speaking too much. I don't know.
But definitely like showing that the community is capable and not just telling but showing is what will help like really convince. Because there's always a question like you can take if you guys have analyzed looked at the sushi DAO drama. There's always issues when it comes to money and there's no transparency and like yeah I don't know how much uh, you guys know about it, but it was a big drama there when it comes to who owns, who has the power to use the money to do something, how much control does the DAO have, and I don't want to speculate on what the sushi team thought, but they were certainly using the DAO's money as if it was there in a way like they didn't consider the community for a lot of the decisions they made. It's at least yeah I don't want to talk down to the sushi team or anything, but
I think slush fund is the operative term for how they were treating the treasury.
yeah, you said it, I guess. So definitely for the Ren Labs organization to be more comfortable providing funding to the Ren DAO. I think it's about showing that capability there, and that the funds won't just be like an airdrop that doesn't just fizzles out. It has to be There has to be a clear way in which the funds actually help accomplish something that the Ren Labs organizations wanted to accomplish anyway, but if it was accomplished through DAO, the DAO's work instead, I mean that's a win-win in a way. Like that solves something that the Ren Labs organization wanted to do, and it helped the Ren DAO organization at the same time. So
If I could interject, I think guys, what Max is trying to tell us all is that it's on us now. He's here to help. He's going to liaise with us and the team. But for us to be taken seriously as a DAO, we've got to just do the work and become something that's really worthy of the team's full consideration. And we can do that. We've been allocated a budget that will grow with protocol rewards. We can vote to use that as we see fit. And I think it's time that we organized and showed them and the broader community what we can do with it. So I think why don't we table the discussion on what's the relationship between Ren Labs and Ren DAO and focus on, as Ren DAO, with what we've got currently, what can we do to grow it and what can we do to start having a real impact. And I think once we've built some structure to do that, the path forward and our relationship with Ren Labs, whether it's contentious or completely collegial, will become much more clear.
Second that.
yeah, thank you for those comments. And yeah, I just noticed the time. I think yeah, we actually do have some proposals that are relevant to this that we maybe should start talking about now, since we maybe just have half an hour. We can stay for a bit longer, but um, don't want to take up the time of everyone's evening or day. So we have this proposal that's out on the forum that's been out. We've been discussing it in the community for a while now. The Community Ecosystem Fund Multisig group. What it is that we have sort of funds now in a smart contract inside RenVM. Those will soon be able to be moved to any arbitrary address. The thing is, to actually meaningfully control uh, those funds should be sort of stored in a different address on, say, Ethereum or some other chain, because we don't have governance modules living on top of Ren yet. So we talked about the SafeSnap implementation, like the funds can be sent to basically a multisig address where community members can vote with the Ren tokens to approve some transfer, and that's great. That's very useful if we want to do like one-time payments to a project that wants some funding to build something. Like, okay, there's a budget and the community approves that, funds get sent. That's a one-time thing maybe. But what if we want to do yield farming with the community ecosystem funds while the funds aren't being used to incentivize something? How would the community manage actual tokens on a chain in a meaningful way? And what we sort of all agreed or come to the same conclusion is that you need some kind of multi-sig to actually handle doing yield farming in DeFi. Um, well, you can't do it with token allocation, because then you have to have a token vote to first send funds to some approve token contract, do approvals, do deposits, then do farming and do withdrawal, withdrawing the yield and withdrawing all the funds. All that's super complicated to do in a completely decentralized fashion. But the middle, the less decentralized but still quite decentralized and functional way is to have a multi-sig that it's a community multi-sig that can do this kind of yield farming, and the yield farming would be something that the community has approved beforehand. So it wouldn't be something, it wouldn't be like a playground or a casino for a select few group of people to do something. It would be like, okay, the community wants to do this kind of yield farming. Okay, let's send these funds over to this multi-sig. That's the community. That's community control. That then do the actual steps it takes to do the yield farming with community funds, which is, that can be 4 or 5 contract interactions in an evening, and then the multi-sig might have to come together a week later to do harvesting or to do withdrawing. And if there's some protocol attack or something, and there's like, okay, we really need to withdraw these funds immediately because there's a risk that this protocol isn't safe, then then the multi-sig has to come coordinate quite quickly to do this. Um, so it would be much faster to do this with a multi-sig than the big community. So that's also one like very important or good reason to have a multi-sig. But it will still be like, it won't be super fast with a multi-sig, but it will be much more flexible. It can handle many more cases, um, and it means that the community ecosystem fund or the community treasury, the Rendau treasury, is not sitting on funds that aren't doing anything. It would actually harvest yield, um, just like everyone else is doing on their own right now. And these funds can be deposited into protocols that are operated by our partners like Badger or Curve. So it can all be like, it's for the benefit of Ren, benefit for Ren partners, benefit for the DAO's treasury. So it benefits the ecosystem. So yeah, we've been talking about this for a long time. It's a tricky thing to uh, resolve all the details, because there could be some exploits if we just gave control to like 3 persons and they were actually all the same one person somehow, and that we decided we're in the multi-sig and then all the funds are stolen. Like, we have to think about all different edge cases and how a multi-sig works. But we've progressed quite a bit now, and it's time to talk about this address the whole community. Should we do this? If yes, okay, let's decide on all the details so we can have a real proposal put out, vote on it, yes, no, and start doing it, and not just talking about it. So I'll link to it in Discord in the governance general channel. But hopefully all of you guys have seen it already, so I don't have to talk about it too much. But basically, we have a few things we still need to resolve before we can move this forward. Um, One thing is the multi-sig members themselves. So there's rough consensus that we should have a 4 out of 7 signer set. So it means that you need 4 peoples in the group to sign a transaction to actually transfer funds, but you have 7 people that are capable of doing it. So it means you don't need all 7 people to sign something, but you need at least 4 out of 7. And that's roughly like everyone sort of, yeah, accept that. You can maybe change it to 3 out of 5 or 6 out of 9, but it doesn't matter too much right now. But then the question is, who are these 7 people? What are the requirements of them? So I don't know if I should be talking anymore now, and we should have an open discussion about this. But some of the like clear things is, okay, should the person be KYC'd or not? Like, people generally say no, and that's good. But then how do we know that this is a real person? And it's not two there's not 2 people who are sort of cooperating together to try to do something malicious. Should they have hardware wallets like a ledger? Should they have dark node operating so they're all aligned? Probably everyone will have a dark node operating, probably, of those who've put up uh, their name in the potential vote. But these are question people. We should address them sort of now before we move forward.
I know one of the recent conversations in the Discord was about or I think it was actually on the forum, somebody was saying, it might have been Tom that was saying if he had to essentially dox his dark nodes, then he might not be quite as willing to join in that process. I don't know if this could be. There was other chatter about possibly people that might be involved in this process having a little video call with Max, just briefly to show that they're a real person. Maybe Max might be able to get a vibe off of that or not. I don't know. This is something to bring up. I don't know how I feel about this either way, but maybe the idea is if in something like that they were able to share with Max their dark node or that kind of a thing. I don't know. I don't know how much that involves the doxing process, or maybe we would want to invite Tom up on the stage to talk a little bit about his concerns as it related to that. Tom, was that do I have that right? Was that you? And then if so, can we bring Tom up on the stage to speak a little bit to that concern?
I believe that was him. Yes.
Tom.
Hey, yeah.
Can you
hear me?
can you elaborate a little bit on that concern that you were sharing on the forum?
Yeah, sure. So, yeah, for me, if like, yeah, proving you have a dark node, you need to show your Ethereum address to someone. So if it was me like doxing it to the entire community, then for me, like my dark nodes are not set up in a way with my addresses that I would be comfortable doing that. There's a lot of history there on the ledger basically. So yeah, that was my main concern around that.
I appreciate it. I think I share that concern. I wouldn't want everybody seeing my, I don't know, history and transactions. I know I've heard some other chatter from some folks just about whether or not even being a dark node holder might reveal enough information about somebody to make them uncomfortable. I don't know enough about that angle itself, but I think I'm in agreement that turning over your address where you hold your dark nodes might seem like a bridge too far.
I think in the last community call, if I remember correctly, we pretty much reached consensus that under no circumstances do any of us want to dox ourselves to the broader community, but also that something very informal and community restricted, perhaps just with Max, so we can get a nod of approval that he says, okay, yeah, this is a viable candidate. Would be, an acceptable level of, quote unquote KYC. And if that's incorrect, let me know. Point one. Point
to
two.
Clarify, not that Max would be signing off or endorsing, or that the team itself would be involved in that. This was, to your point, very informal, not like a taking a position of approval, or that the team's involved. If that makes sense. But sorry, go ahead.
Correct. Yeah. So that's my impression of where we left it. And if that were the case, I certainly wouldn't want to display my my dark node address for the same reason Tom mentioned. But I don't think personally that Max would be a concern, especially if we had an NDA, which was one thought. But I do think that with something like this, we want people to have the most to lose if things go wrong with community allocation of funds, which those people would be the dark node hold operators. So I mean, I would need to see a good reason for a candidate to not be a dark node operator. What would they bring to the table if not, mutual assured destruction were things to go haywire? That's one comment I would offer on that topic.
Yeah, and I want to also just agree that I don't think we should dox anyone's address. And I also share the concern that if the person isn't a dark node operator, then yeah, it, what's what value do they bring, and are we comfortable with that value? We can be like if we have 6 people that are dark node operators, like we can sort of informally or like sort of roughly confirm that, and then there's one person that isn't. Like, is that a big deal? Probably not a big deal, and we could get away with that. Um, but yeah,
I
yeah.
sorry, go ahead.
No, you can go.
I agree with that sentiment. Then, if it, especially, it's easier to concede to if it doesn't involve the doxing part. So, I think to echo Tom's concern a little bit from that makes sense to me. Maybe in that informal conversation with you, there could be an easy way to kind of demonstrate that. I also, um, I feel somewhat strongly as well. You brought it up that it involves a hardware wallet. Um, this would give the reassurance to me that the person making the signing would be doing it sort of positively, with their own identity rather than if some number of members were, I don't know, you know, rooted or something like that, or remotely controlled or that kind of a thing. So I think that's a good idea. I don't know if other people feel that that's so strong that it must be a requirement, but I think it's worth having at least a brief conversation about.
I support hardware wallets. Does anyone have a preference on which brand?
Well, it seems like there's always issues with Trezor and MetaMask. MetaMask works better now with Ledger. Um, since the recent sort of partnership, they seem to have resolved a lot of the issues. But Trezor, like, there's some stuff you can't do with the Trezor right now. It looks like. So I would strongly recommend that it's a Ledger, even if it's strange to sort of endorse a specific brand over another. It actually seems like there might be issues for a multi-sig member if they have a Trezor instead, that there might, if unless they know that they've been able to do all kinds of DeFi stuff with a Trezor and MetaMask working, and they can try it out on the Gnosis Safe Snap. They can create a multi-sig on their own on a cheap chain like Polygon or whatever. They can confirm that they can sign transactions that are sort of involved. Uh, then that's cool. But I've seen so many people talking about not working with Trezor, so I would be concerned or worried a bit.
To your
Fair
point,
enough.
if it's a
So
functionality issue, that would make sense.
Yeah,
But I don't
yeah.
think we have any other preference, right?
can we agree upon just using ledgers then as treasury members?
Cool with that.
Uh, I don't know if that's entirely the conclusion we came to there. I mean, that was really if it was based on functionality, right?
Yeah,
I've got a ledger.
functionality.
I think it works great. I love it. But if someone had a Trezor and it was able to work for them, like we wouldn't have a concern with that if it worked, would we?
I have a Trezor. It seems to work for me, but at the same time, I wouldn't mind buying a ledger. It's like $50 or whatever, you know?
Gotcha.
I mean, if
I've
someone
used
can
them both.
demonstrate that they can get Trezor working with Gnosis multisig, and then they can do all stuff, all signing, then that's all evidence we need. Because it will eventually turn out if we're doing something and a person can't sign it with the address in the future, then we have to rotate that person out, or that person has to we have to change our multisig uh, in the future, exchanging that, so that
Yeah.
person might get a ledger eventually. Then, if we still want the same person in the multisig set, but if a person can't sign any transactions uh, in the multisig, then that person has to be kicked out because they can't functionally be a part of the multisig. So we can have that sort of fail safe, I guess. Then that if it turns out that the person can't sign, then we'll have to vote
One
someone
benefit
else in.
with having
Mm.
one benefit with having the ledger is that I'm actually a Trezor fan, but Trezor doesn't support that many chains and so on. So if we later on want to expand the treasury into other chains and all that, then Ledger I think will be a lot easier. And both of them have been around for quite a bit now, so they should be safe enough.
That's a good point. Hopefully we don't have a lot of problems with it, but I was picturing a kind of a little pilot run with whoever is chosen, just to do a couple of test signings anyways to make sure everybody involved is capable.
Yeah, definitely. When we create the multisig eventually with the people that we've decided, we'll do trials. We do test transactions to see that we can do stuff without any money being sent from the Ren DAO before that. So we'll figure out when it comes to that point if there's an issue or not. So there's no risk, at least in the beginning, that we'll lose any money because of this. So we could sort of table that for later. So we'll say like, okay, as long as the person has tried it, I mean, then we don't care about it. And if there's a
Perfect.
problem in the future, then we'll handle that at that point.
Can we definitely take off the table somebody not having a hardware wallet? We all agree that a hardware wallet would be a requirement.
Definitely. I mean, if something
Oh,
goes
yeah.
wrong later on, it would just be too embarrassing if one of us didn't have it.
All right, I agree with that as well then.
It seems like also we're in agreement that, there's no need to dox anyone, yeah?
Yeah,
Unless they
definitely.
dox
Oh, I
themselves.
think so.
Yeah, no addresses, definitely.
Okay, so we agreed upon that as well. What else was on the table that we needed to finalize in that RFC?
I've got a question
Do we
though.
agree that it has to be darknet owner, or
I've got a question though. Why do we think that doxing is there's the same level to doxing in any way that it can be handled? What about providing the address, for example, to Max? Does Max does not want to do that, for example, or
I wouldn't
uh,
want to see anyone's address. That's an uncomfortable position for me as well.
okay, then perhaps maybe we can there can be some other way. Maybe we can show the address to each other and confirm it that way. You'll be among us as well.
Is there a way
Uh,
of like signing something as a dark node
sure.
holder, like some sort of test vote without doxing the address? Or is
No.
that I don't know enough about. Okay,
No,
A
you can.
snapshot
You can.
you would see,
gotcha.
or you could say that we need to, we could do a test vote where we need to have 7 signatures, but we don't say
Gotcha.
which ones is whose.
Gotcha.
That's an option as well. Yeah.
But you could also cheat on that, I think. So no, wait,
Okay.
no, you couldn't cheat because you need a dark node to actually sign. So you could do a test like that. Uh, so we would see everyone's addresses, but we wouldn't know who's who, if you get it. But that's also
Yeah,
like,
no, I understand.
What if we asked Ren Labs to write into the dark node console the ability to nominate a secondary voting address that can be changed, so that we could hide the identity of the actual dark node, but use its delegated signing address for the purpose of governance votes, and then use that to verify. Maybe that's too complicated, but just a thought.
I'll definitely ask our dark node expert on our team to see if there's some sneaky, cool way you can do it without doxing. Because there might be, like, we could just say, show your dark node ID, or something like that, where you can't. Maybe the dark node you can figure out who owns what dark node ID, but maybe there's like some signature or something that I can see that's unique that shows that it's a dark node, but I don't have to see an address. Like, I'll ask Yunshi, who's our expert on that. So I can look that
Yeah,
up.
that might make everyone comfortable with it being back to something that you could verify, but without disclosing too much information to make you uncomfortable.
Are we stating that it's a requirement to own a dark node?
Know that there are some community members who feel very strongly about multi-sig members having a dark node. That's why I bring this question up.
So in a way, aren't we all kind of saying in some way or another that we have one?
Yeah, I mean,
Well, I'm not sure why are we so discreet? Yeah, for example, I have a dark node. Yeah,
Like,
at
I
least
have a dark
it's
node. I mean, I feel like everyone here probably does. If not, why would we be here, right?
I try not to disclose that I have a dark node, but I guess if we're on the record now on a call about the involvement being dark node required, that's kind of out of the bag.
yeah, it might be that everyone already has it, and we're just talking about an unreal situation. So we,
I don't know, but I also think that not only are we more than likely all of us are third operators, but I think that we're thinking about on the longevity of this, right? And what the current request for comments, I think, is only for about 12 months. So what happens after? It's about laying the groundwork for it. So I'm right there with all y'all. Like, obviously, being a DNO is pretty important. I mean, that we have to maintain the positive sum mentality that the co-founders have, Longy and Tang have infused the community with. But how to do that in a way that really creates that win-win for everybody involved, I don't know. And I don't know much deep, I don't have deep knowledge of the tech to know if it's even possible to signal that we're DNOs. But I think that the point is not really for this next 12 months, rather for the longevity of it, which obviously I'm just excited to hear that we're all really committed to this, because it's like, wow, we're really thinking long term. But I think that's sort of why this is such a big deal now. But I don't know if I'm just speaking about for myself or if other community members share that sort of longevity perspective and why this seems to be an issue now.
We're definitely trying to set up the long term. I think I want to expand on that briefly to let people know we're talking about signers of the multi-sig, and that them being dark nodes would make sense as an incentivization so that they're making the right decisions for the community. Beyond that, there's a lot of room for people to contribute to governance, and we need contributions from everybody. And we're not saying that you need to be a dark node operator to help with the DAO. Some folks are going to have a small stack of Ren that they're going to be contributing to a pool, and they're going to be invested in this community. This is something we're talking about for right now. I don't want to turn off anybody's ideas at contribution for some high bar of requirement beyond that.
A great point.
But it also bears mentioning that a non-dark node operator is a non-voting community member, and it would be, as I said before, I wouldn't be completely opposed. For instance, if we had somebody who is an expert in DAO governance from a well-known third-party organization to come and sit on, what ultimately became something like a board of directors, that would make sense, because they would have some real value that is recognizable. But it would have to be something like that, to essentially promote a non-voting member of the community into such a key role, in my opinion.
What I think, guys? I think there's a small issue about not doxing and all that stuff and being private. There's a thing that a lot of people like in crypto is called trustlessness, right? But we can't have trustlessness when we are talking about people, so us. And there's a good example from real world where some trusted um community members or some people in power, uh, all they do is with complete transparency. It's documented from A to Z, all their movements, all their decisions, everything. So the only way that multi-sig members, and I'm talking long term here, the only way multi-sig members can provide complete transparency to community members is by basically doxing themselves one way or another, I think. For example, today you have like, I don't know, 5 dark nodes running. In 2 years, community fund blows up. There are tens of millions, hundreds of millions, maybe, I don't know, of funds available and being signed on a regular basis. And you decide to, for example, shut down your dark nodes for whatever reason. Isn't that something that community should know about? Just an example. It's a question. It's not a statement. What do you think?
I think Wes wants to speak. He raised his hands. Can somebody let him invite him up?
Yeah, I just did.
Yeah, so I like your points, RV, about knowing if right, like, so okay, so we'll Max will somehow verify that we all, or the multi-sig members, have dark nodes, and then there needs to be a way to, I guess, check in and see if whatever 3 epochs down the line, do these multi-sig members still have those dark nodes, or do they just get that dark node for this the initial verification?
Could you repeat the last part? Because,
I agree with Arvi that there needs to be almost like a checkup if the multi-sig members
yeah, still,
continually
yeah,
run their dark node.
yeah. I mean, but so maybe that will be evident in that they will be less active in the DAO and less active in the multisig, and they'll just, I mean, they'll want to hand over control because otherwise you still have to be engaged in multi-sig transactions. And you can see, like, for instance, Wi-Fi, Yearn Finance, they continually change their multi-sig members based sort of on performance. That, okay, so this person has been great to us, but we know that that person is sort of focused on a different project, so it's best for everyone if we exchange this person into a new we switch seat with someone else here. And they keep doing that, and that seems to work fine. And I think in this case, if someone decides that their focus is turned elsewhere, they will be known. It will be easy to tell that the person sort of, yeah, stopped engaging in governance and they're not involved in multi-sig transactions. Then we'll just switch them out as we go along. But someone else might have like an opinion on this, if we should do checkups. I mean, we could do, if it's possible to do checkups, then of course that's good to have in the process. But I wouldn't
One
be
one
too
thought,
worried. Mm.
one thought. We could build ultimately, for the long term, some sort of separate governance dashboard. That kept certain statistics about various key holders to the different multi sigs that may perpetuate through the DAO structure. And those could be dark node uptime, the way votes happened, how many multi sigs were voted on by each of the members, party to that particular multi sig, and so forth. And that's something that we could have developed with community ecosystem funds. So and it's probably something that would be beneficial, because then when outside these want to take a look at how Ren DAO operates such a dashboard, or at least a community facing version of the dashboard, probably it should be the same for everyone. Would be able to show pretty quickly, what everybody's, for lack of a better term, voting record was.
Stuff like that is already out there. On one of the previous calls, we've talked about that, and the example was Yearn Finance, and they have this stuff.
Yeah, we should copy what they have, I think, when it comes to the multisig. This multisig at least. 'Cause that's been shown to work in production, so Yearn Finance has that kind of dashboard, and we could think about building out some kind of Ren version that shows other things that were mentioned just now. So yeah, and in the future we will have certainly governance contracts on top of Ren itself. So there might be a future where we could have multi-sig contracts in Ren. So there's no need to even consider like deal with multi-sigs on different chains. We just have a multi-sig in Ren, and maybe that can be tied through dark nodes, so we can have some kind of like, yeah, we can verify that someone's a dark node operator, because that wouldn't be I don't there wouldn't be any funds stored on that when we move to controlling our dark nodes inside Ren directly and not on Ethereum. You will be able to tell someone has a dark node without there being any funds stored in it. So I think in the future, like, all of these issues will get resolved because we'll have this living inside Ren itself. Um, so we're sort of just talking about the short midterm. What are we gonna do this year and maybe part of next year before we have this inside Ren? Um, so yeah, maybe my point is just that we shouldn't be worried too much. Maybe that it sort of will get resolved. later in line, but we need also to make sure that there's no risk of any funds getting taken or stuck because there's not enough people to sign a transaction or something.
Where does that? Go ahead.
Sorry. I just wanted to bring up to you guys' attention. There's a very good feedback from Raven99 in the community general chat, where he or she is saying that this could just be positive. So I guess like a point system. Like if you are DNO, if you dox yourself, if you have a history in the community of contributing, kind of used to racking up some sort of point or positive momentum, and then obviously that can be presented to the community. So that could be another return that good points as well. I don't know if he's in the call, but he just posted that.
Yeah, those are some very good points, I think.
Oops, sorry. Go ahead, Harvey.
Basically, I'm gonna be I'm gonna speak plainly. One of the concerns I would have if I was just a simple member, just a community member, yeah, I would be concerned with some unknown names. I've been with Ran for, I don't know, 4 years now. Yeah, basically 4 years, almost. And in the Telegram chat, I'm basically daily. And in this call, I'm seeing quite a bit of new names that are just starting to establish themselves in the community. And I assume, and some community members even approached me, and they were a tad bit uncomfortable. I would say, I would call it, with having multi-sig members that they have never heard of before, and I'm pretty sure they would be put at ease, or at least somewhat, if they either doxed themselves or proved to be a darknet operator or something of that sort. And as Draven said, it should definitely be viewed as a positive gesture towards the community. Maybe not a requirement, but a positive gesture nonetheless.
Yeah, I mean, I can show you guys my cool Epoch 1 NFTs.
That would be an interesting way to do it.
Utility.
I mean, you could just copy, copy, paste an image, so it would be possible to cheat. But
Yeah,
I also
right.
don't think anyone would cheat. So I mean, what we're all sort of getting at is that um, as long as like we sort of recognize some person, like there's probably very low risk that there's gonna be any problem here. And if we sort of resolved all of the criteria for being part of the membership, then the other thing is just, yeah, should we have a vote then? Should people be able to put up their name? And then in that process, I think all of these things will sort of resolve themselves. If we have like a 100-word blurb, you can tell sort of who's going to be a dark node operator or not, and they could choose to sort of try to convince that they have one or sort of show that they have a hardware wallet or something. But we don't maybe need to make it a requirement, and we'll see then. Yeah, I think we'll see that these are people you can rely on, people who've added their name to the list, and then the community votes on who they think suits the best in this multi-sig. If we have more than 7 names, yeah, then there will be a vote. So the community makes the decision here, and I think the community sort of knows, or will have some kind of good sense of who's a good community member that you can rely on, that probably has a darknet operator and is involved in governance, who would fit in this multi-sig. So maybe we can sort of just move on ahead and say that there's no requirements on these things. But
Yeah, should we talk about the yield strategies that are also in the proposal?
Yeah, unless someone wants to make a final comment on the multisig members.
Briefly, I thought we had sort of, for the most part, agreed that we would require a hardware wallet.
Oh yeah. I mean, yeah, a hardware wallet. Yes, I agree. It doesn't have to be a Trezor hard a ledger, but somehow maybe we can do like a they can DM me just a new picture of their hardware with their hand, but it doesn't have to show any address or anything, but just to sort of make a ver yeah verify that they have that. But
and then just in
A
case we
hardware wallet up
reinsure,
against a screen of NFTs, right?
or yeah, today's dated newspaper and your command console uh, of your dark node. In case it reassures somebody, Max, you were saying you still might be checking in with your dark node expert to see if there was a way that somebody could show you that they were a dark node operator without you needing to
Yeah,
see
I'm gonna check
a
that with
level of discovery.
Junshi
Okay.
because maybe there's
So it
some
sounds like that's still potentially outstanding as an option.
yeah, I mean if it's a simple way to do it, if there's like one command you can do in your client interface which sort of tells you that the person has a dark node, that they can maybe send a screenshot uh, with the today's newspaper or something to show that it's not like someone else's picture, that can show that it's they have a operating dark node without doxing any address, that would be great. But maybe we can just have a member do it without, even if there's no like technical way to do it without doxing, maybe just showing the command line interface somehow. I mean, because then the person who wanted to
Something that only a
cheat,
dark node operator would have.
yeah, I mean it would be a challenge to sort of in quick in like if we have a call and then I say, okay, now can you show me your command line interface? If they don't have one, they couldn't install it in 5 minutes and sort of set it all up. But if they already had it installed, it would be easy to show. So maybe there's like just some easy, not sort of foolproof, but still sort of like 99% bulletproof method. That would be good enough, I think, for everyone.
We also talked about having a webcam chat, simple webcam chat, I think. What about that?
Yeah, I mean, are people comfortable with that? I mean, I don't mind just
I am, for example. I don't know about
I
you
am
guys.
too. That's not a
Yeah, for
problem.
sure.
it would
Yeah,
just
that
be like
would.
a 2 minute thing then, just saying hello. I can see that you're not a robot. I'll do the Turing test on you, and then we're done.
No, that seems like a good idea. I think that's also something that we talked about might reassure some people voting. Is like, again, you're not endorsing anybody, and the team itself is not making any official things, but that you'd had a chance to say, hey, this person didn't appear to be made out of code.
Yeah. Unless someone objects, we can maybe just agree to that. No pressure. Like I won't ask you any strange questions. Then it would just be a quick wave, um, and maybe do the dark node client interface check quickly. If we can do that at the same time, then maybe we can take care of all those problems at once.
Are we gonna get some bonus points for wearing a Ren t-shirt?
It depends. Yeah, if you bought one from Shiliam, you get even more bonus points because you supported him. Um, I don't think there's a lot of the Shiliam ones, and there's not a lot of the team ones as well. We haven't made too many, I think. Those are very rare, unique NFTs, but in real life. But okay, yeah, it's late, so we should just quickly talk about the yield farming strategy then. Um, we have a few alternatives. One would be doing it in the Badger Vault, but the Badger Vault wasn't ready for multi-sigs yet, but it might be soon, according to Mitch from Badger DAO. Alternatively, you can just do it yourself on curve. So you just do the depositing and the harvesting of the rewards. You you have to pay more gas fees because it's on Ethereum. So what's better
We
with
should use
Badger is that you get less gas fees over time.
convex to save gas on curve, shouldn't we?
If we can use convex, then that would also be. But then someone has to verify that path. If you can verify that, and we have that in the proposal. And the third is maybe,
Badgers. Oops, sorry.
yeah, just a third is
I was
maybe
suggesting that.
moving.
I'm gonna be quiet.
Yeah. But just the third alternative is to use crypto pool, split up the Bitcoin into Ethereum and USD as well. But we have those alternatives, so you can make your point now.
Sorry, I was gonna point out that Badger is rewarding, in addition to the auto compounding to save gas, they're rewarding their pools with a lot of Badger token, which we could either decide we were interested in holding or for trading for more. But it's a significant addition in percentage yield.
Are we concerned about the safety of Badger DAO?
They had a front end attack, but it wasn't a contract attack. So if we are very diligent when we do our contract approvals, I wouldn't say there's a worry there. Um, Not any more than any other protocol. Um, but if someone has a concern about Badger safety, they should definitely mention it. Because so far their contracts haven't been hacked or anything or exploited. It's just, yeah, the UI. So when you do, I'm not sure exactly how you verify when you interact with their contracts that it's not some sketchy thing that you're signing instead, but maybe someone more technically experienced could easily help resolve those worries for us.
It wasn't a UI issue that was their fault, right? This was like their upstream provider. This was
Yeah.
Cloudflare, something like that.
Yeah.
Maybe
It was
Max,
in the
maybe you
front
have.
end that somebody was injecting malicious code or malicious signing addresses and contract data into the front end, essentially by swapping out in the UX, you know, the underlying Badger data for something else. So my
Yeah,
understanding was
they
that
were
it was a front end hack and had nothing to do with smart contract risk itself. But then again, humans are fallible creatures, and how many of us really go and read every line of that little squiggly text that pops up on our ledger, when we go to sign a transaction to send something somewhere? We probably should be at this point, given the proliferation of these types of attacks. But
true.
it's not easily human readable stuff at this point in the
For the sake of
development of.
this conversation, though, it's not necessarily a Badger specific thing. That risk would continue to exist anywhere we interacted with any contracts at, it would seem. Max, you have a lot of access to a lot of technical folks. Maybe you could get somebody's heads up on how they feel like that might be a reasonable way to mitigate that, or I don't know, maybe just have a conversation in there and see if you can glean any knowledge about that.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely can lean on the Ren team for advice, so we definitely have that option.
Do we know how much percentage we're looking to allocate into one of these strategies?
We haven't talked about that really. I don't know what the assumption is that we would be maybe allocating most of the community ecosystem fund for now until I think there's sort of agreement that we should have a funding round maybe sometime in Q1 because we approved that as a community, but we haven't been able to do a funding round yet. But as soon as we can move those community ecosystem funds, which is maybe this month, sometime in the next week or so, from that point on, we could technically have a funding round. But we
So
would
to be clear, right now the goal is just to approve a strategy to which later we would dedicate or decide on a percentage. Yeah.
I think I think we would want to implement that yield strategy as soon as possible, right? Um, Otherwise, we're sort of losing steam. So it might be good for us to decide that now.
I thought that there was general sort of consensus on the prior calls that we'll invest everything that we have right now. It's not much, obviously, but this is sort of like it's better to provide it to a preferred partner that has supported us, that we can support them as well. And it's small too. So it's sort of like a test run also of the structure we're creating. But from my understanding, the general consensus was everything that we have there as of now.
Yeah,
The
that was
idea
my
that
understanding too.
funds at
Yep.
rest would be earning a yield while they weren't being actively used for other community fund purposes.
Yeah,
Makes sense to me.
we could quickly withdraw if we're doing a funding round, we could withdraw a percentage from that, uh, depending on what the community thinks, how much we should allocate to the funding round itself. So when we do that in the future, we have everything allocated to a yield farming strategy, and that's sort of earning yield. And when the funding round is approaching, then we decide how much should we allocate to the funding round. Then we simply just withdraw that from the yield farming, that allocation, and the rest keeps growing. So that's like a simple way to manage things that I think everyone sort of would agree to.
And it bears mentioning that we also discussed in the future we would have a more comprehensive asset allocation strategy. But this was really more about getting the structure in place, getting things moving, getting the DAO, the treasury focused part of the DAO, making decisions, getting multi-sig set up, and earning a yield. I will be, consistently beating the drum of holding long term a lot of the assets in stablecoins, so that when we do face the next crypto winter, we're not caught out at an 84% drop in usable treasury funds. But for now, in the interest of getting things moving, this is what we've come up with as a first step.
I kind of also like the diversification liberty, and I think alternative 3 speaks the most to that, and that one has my vote.
Yes, we should put all the best proposals out there, and then I think we have to do like a ranked choice vote for the yield strategy we eventually choose, and we'll see what the broader community thinks. And ultimately, it's also their money, so I mean, even if they're not on the call right now, I mean, we should definitely listen to. It will be ultimately be up to everyone with how they vote here.
Personally, I also like Try Crypto Pool a lot. And if we decide to go through Convex, at the moment it yields about 14%, which is pretty respectable, I think, for a conservative strategy. And it's gas optimized.
Yeah, it does have those benefits, RV. That's a great point.
Right now, the Badger Try Crypto pool, though, where they add their own to it, is getting upwards of 56%. So I mean, it's something to consider. I mean, that's a massive difference.
So maybe, I mean, yeah, the Badger will ultimately be up to if we can do multi-sig deposits. Right now we can't, but Mitch said that they were
Yep.
coming out with new contracts. So if we don't have that alternative when we vote, then we simply can't have those in the
That's
vote.
good. That's a good
But
point.
if we yeah,
Yep.
if we can use it, then we put them in the vote. If we can't, we don't. And then we have the Try Crypto and the Convex alternative. I mean, I think those are good ones. And the Curve manual. We have
Just
those
want
in
to
the mix, and you just vote, and we'll see what the community decides.
clarify so that listeners will know the 50% that were just mentioned are with a maximum Badger boost. So effectively, you will be farming with lesser amount than what you would have with convex, and you would also be exposed for a hefty sum to Badger volatility, Badger token. I mean, just for clarity.
I think we've talked about it. You don't have to be exposed to the Badger. You could use another.
You could use Dig, yeah.
Yeah, you could use something like Dig, which is supposed to be Bitcoin pegged or that kind of a thing. But it sounds like we still have plenty of discussion to do about it. I think worth considering is spreadsheeting out some of the returns. So some people might prefer a little bit of diversification here, but if this was short term and it was earning 30% more on a different strategy, would that affect somebody's decision on which allocation they preferred or not? And it might. I'm not sure, but something to consider.
Has anyone here tried investing in Dig?
I hold Dig.
Yeah, I held Dig for a while, but it hadn't really gone great for me personally since the beginning.
Basically, I think it's about how conservative we want to be with the community fund. Uh, the Badger path, I think, is less conservative. It's a bit more aggressive because you're exposed either to the Badger or to the Dig, which is a rebase token, and it implies some additional contract risk and all that stuff. So I think the decision between going convex curve or Badger convex curve is should be decided upon how aggressive you want to be, how risk exposed you want to be.
Certainly, we can start with one, and then as the other one becomes an opportunity, we can revisit it.
Yeah, definitely, sure.
Yes. So the one thing I'm thinking now is, as we make the proposal, we need to allow the community to be informed on the different strategies, and there might not be. So we need to have some kind of text that outlines potential or like estimated returns, but also includes some risks, some kind of comparison. Maybe like having one spreadsheet that shows all of them with some example values. If someone could put that up, I think that would be tremendously good uh, for us. Otherwise, community members are voting sort of maybe just based on what they know, they might not know all these different strategies we could use, and there might be one that's better.
Yeah, there definitely should be some explanation and implications for different strategies explained. Definitely.
We have
And timing. You know, for instance, if we do a convex strategy, you know, what are we doing with the CVX yields? Are we selling those weekly back into BTC or stables or ETH, or are we keeping those and bankrolling those? I know that you know, a lot of the more conservative funds out there, you know, basically sell off all of their platform APY rewards daily or weekly, which is a way of mitigating governance token risk in, you know, in bear trends. We'd want to outline all of that for each strategy, you know, timing and what we're doing and what the flow looks like.
Hey guys.
Let Cowboy introduce.
Yeah, I just wanted to add to this topic a little bit. I mean, I think it would be really important to make a document that highlights all of our different options here. One thing on this topic, we've kind of disregarded the idea of uh, I think people dismiss the idea of protocol owned liquidity as far as like supporting like a Ren BTC pair or something like that. But I wonder if we could work with like a concentrated liquidity manager. Like, I mean, we already have a partnership a bit with the ICE developers, I guess. But there's also like Elixir Finance and a few other ones. And those use Uniswap version 3 pools, and you can they get like 100% APY on a lot of pairs. Because they're concentrated liquidity, they can be super efficient. You can't do like a raw uh, Uniswap version 3 pool with a DAO so easily because they're NFTs, NFT style contract. But yeah, using like a concentrated liquidity manager, we could support liquidity for the Ren token or any of our assets like Ren BTC, or I would suggest one of the bigger ones. But I think that something along those lines could be a good option for some of these funds.
Are you saying that's the way to deploy them, or that's the way for the strategy of how they're being used when they're not being deployed otherwise? Like, is that a community outreach, or is that a way to expand the funds amount, the yield?
I guess that's what I'm saying. Is it's killing two birds with one stone. That it acts as liquidity for our the ecosystem, part of the Ren DAO, and then also like Ren BTC and all of that. We could choose those pairs, but because it's concentrated liquidity, you can get really high APY that's auto compounded. So you can get like, it would depend on the pair and the volume, but yeah, you can get close to like 100% APYs. Like a lot of these, it's a concentrated liquidity is sort of a new thing that's popping up right now, and so they're still proving themselves, and there is extra contract risk, which is brought up with like dig. But,
yeah. On the topic, I wanted to kind of review concentrated liquidity. There's a lot of bad to provide it. I mean, a great one is like Pfizer, but they've been hacked twice and they rebranded now to Gamma. But there was another partner, which is a Popsicle Finance. And I wanted to bridge that into what I wanted to get on the call about, which is what happened to Abracadabra and Ren partnerships. Is that still on the table, or is Ren Mim dead? I mean, I saw a few wild Ren Mims on the Etherscan, but seemingly kind of kaput since then. So if you don't mind, sharing what's going on there. And then on the topic, I mean, if we're going to delve into Uniswap V3 liquidity, obviously Popsicle is their in-house product. But I also wanted to rewind a little bit to the CDX TriCrypto pool, because they also have a cauldron. And, if we're talking about farming rewards and we're not discussing, let's say reasonable leverage, it kind of doesn't make sense. So are there any thoughts, or, can I elaborate better?
Abracadabra, we're definitely still on the table. That's just host to host being rolled out. So that's when we have it on Renbridge, then we'll have like RenMim on Solana and everything. Yeah, so that's still coming.
Noted. So any reason like a TriCrypto proposal does not include a cauldron?
Well, I'm not sure. I don't know much about this, so I shouldn't be commenting, I think.
Noted. I don't mean. Go ahead.
Yeah. Does anyone have any thoughts on that approach?
Well, I would just say feel free to propose a comprehensive strategy that includes all of these elements, and we're all happy to discuss and review.
Right, and so
yeah, there's only so many of us working on it. I would say have at it. Tell us.
But gentlemen, that's where it gets serious. So like, coming to you from as a Yearn strategist perspective, they pay for it. So if we're seriously talking about, hey, we're going to acquire a war chest and we're going to put it to war, then it requires some diligence. And it was a great phrase. I think it was Arvi who mentioned it way earlier in the conversation, which it boils down to budgets. So if we have allocations or we have incentives, like, hey guys, you know what we have? We have a pile of assets that are for sure 1-for-1. You don't have to worry about proof of reserve. If we want to take on the risk of being 50% LPs in like a WBTC pool, like that's on us. But maybe we have a couple of concurrent strategies that run, especially when we have like partnerships that we bridge and benefit off of. I mean, like a TriCrypto vault, like I would agree, like that's a pretty aggressive APY on what you could consider blue chip DeFis. But it brings into another conversation, which are we just dumping those for stables as we acquire? Or do we want to start taking on like a redacted, if you guys are familiar with redacted cartel, where they're basically borrowing from OHM's bonding mechanics to say, hey, we're only going to acquire governance tokens. And so now we're going to be a CRV lord and a CDX lord and soon a Frax lord. And so, those are all mutually beneficial ecosystems, and I feel like they don't, oftentimes they're not even aware of like the potential of Ren, or they are even aware it's an option. Anyway.
I like you.
I think there's obviously room to talk about the strategies going forward. I think part of this was yield, is turning the funds that were just sitting there into a higher yield. But the biggest part of it was about getting this proto DAO working group structure going. I would say the large long term, are we trying to control governance of other platforms, might be beyond the scope of our initial strategy of getting the working group together. But but lay it out, like get in the chat and bring those options. Like let's talk about what's out there and what the options are. Like I'd love to hear more about it.
Yeah, basically, I
My,
think what you're saying are great points, and that's the stuff that I've been thinking about as well. But on a previous calls, we kind of talked about that we want to get our feet wet as soon as possible. Basically, get in the game, like get this thing going on. And if we are gonna discuss such complex things that you just mentioned, this can go on months on for a long time, basically. Yeah.
Well, and
for sure.
I'll pitch in, honey, Earl, and say that bring it absolutely, like put it on the the threads, and I think that the energy you bring and the perspective, obviously, lay it out, like just share with the community what you think is best. But it's the reason why this hasn't been discussed. I think is because there's a couple things that I don't know if you were present in the prior calls, but we wanted to one show kind of support and gratitude to our partners. We also wanted to minimize risk, and we kind of just wanted to test the framework and implement it. Hence why the treasury, the community ecosystem fund is very small. So that's why in the prior calls there was broad consensus. Hey, let's just put it all in XYZ. RV sort of the guy that the man to go to. He's very knowledgeable on those options, and he's kind of been spearheading that for this particular amount that we have. But obviously, as this gets better, a couple of assumptions here. Let's assume host to host gets released soon, right? And the community ecosystem fund grows. Of course, I mean that but we would love to hear more options, and obviously, the bigger the pot, that the more aggressive it can become, right? So just don't let anything stop you, for sure.
Get involved.
No, for sure. And gentlemen, I'm not like a first epoch Chad, but I was here since the second epoch, and it's it's a pleasure. And I got to say, I'm very impressed with the vision. So how to help grow, because I feel like we have a great growth arc, but we could be so much more. It's weird to watch certain things on the side that maybe don't have nearly as much merit as Ren pool 100,000 X's or whatever. But I'm not really even here for that. It's a weird way to say it. Like the money's nice, but I'm also here for the tech. And I think the promise of Ren is tremendous, and we definitely need to do a better job evangelizing, as well as integrating. But like you guys said, it's stuff's in the work. Host to host is imminent, so I'm going to be patient, and I'll hop in the forums a little bit more actively as well.
Good to hear that.
I wanted to ask, are we going to discuss the Sobobi's recent RFC at least a little bit? The one with about the fees. The call agenda was posted before it, so I'm not sure if it was intended to skip discussing it or if we want to discuss it. Certainly I do. I want to discuss the fees part.
Yeah. So to wrap up, we should. I mean, maybe we can have a cutoff in 20 minutes because it's getting late. But at least for me. But yeah. So to wrap up the last, I think. Yeah, Honey Earl, for instance, if you have any good ideas that can be like implemented quickly, add those to the forum thread, and we can have them in the vote as well. And I think we before we post the final vote, I think we need to have some kind of document that outlines every strategy, so community members can have an informed vote. That's my only concern. That before I want to post a vote on RIP with a snapshot link, we should have something there. But we can discuss this offline. Um, Someone who
Just so
feels very passionate about it, feel free to do that. Yeah.
just so you know, Max, what is the deadline before posting RIP?
No, I mean that's what we all sort of what we feel we should do. It's as quick as possible, but we had the blocker that the mainnet upgrade needs to happen, which is I think it's maybe this week or maybe next week. The mainnet upgrade is gonna happen. So I mean the vote. I mean we could do it in 1 week if we wanted to. We could push it to 2 weeks, but it would be nice if we don't make this drag on for like 4 weeks. I think that would be too much. But in 1 2 week, if we could be ready by maybe 2 weeks tops, that would be, I think, best to keep this going. But I don't know if you have any thoughts on this, let me know.
I was just wanna make sure that guys don't postpone posting their thoughts on the forum, and do that as soon as possible. That's why I wanted to ask this.
Great. So yeah, let's quickly discuss Sabobi's proposal here on the burn and mint fee, because that's also coming up soon. Um, I'm not sure if it's in this minute upgrade or next minute upgrade that's coming just like a couple of weeks after. There's gonna be two minute upgrades, but so this one is in the second one, but it's also very soon, so it's very fitting to have a discussion on this now. So the burn and mint, I don't know, Sabobi, do you want to speak? I mean, the burn and mint is a new transaction type that the team is implementing that allows you to go from, say, Ren BTC to Ren BTC on a different chain without releasing back to real BTC first, and so then you don't have to pay BTC transaction fees. There's only one Ren VM fee plus the gas on each chain, but if it's a cheap chain to a cheap chain, there's like no gas, so it's just the burn and mint fee. So we need to consider that fee. It can be different from the mint and the burn fee, so it can be like whatever. Say it could be 1 basis point, it could be 10, 100, doesn't matter, and it doesn't matter how it's related to the other two. So do you want to say something here, Sabobi, maybe?
Yeah, I don't want to take too much time as it's getting late, but just to add to what Max just briefed, I think there's a very good conversation going on in the forum already. So if everyone could just have a quick look and see what they feel and maybe add some comments to it, then at the end of the week or early next week, I will try to uh, wrap it all up and summarize so we can move on to RIP, and then from there do the voting and see how we can set uh, a common ground for what the community wants, so that we can start aligning our goals with the Ren team, and the Ren team can actually see that we are part of the decisions that going to affect the protocol on a more serious level as well. And it could be a good start for us to show that we actually want to be part of the decisions that actually influence the important parts of the protocol. And from there, we later on can take it further and suggest other things in the future as well. So as Max said, the main points I would point out is basically that this is a separate fee, so it's not a mint fee or a burn fee. So it's going to be between two chains that are not the native chain. So let's say you have the BTC, you go from the BTC to the Ethereum chain, and then from Ethereum you go to Arbitrum, Solana, whatever. That's going to be the burn and mint fee. Or let's say you move USDC from Ethereum to Solana, that would be a regular mint fee. But then when you move from Solana to Arbitrum or Polygon or whatnot, that would be the burn and mint fee. And that distinction is quite important. So I would suggest to just have a quick look through the comments, and the first post I'm hoping was clear enough. And then, yeah, from there, just as little, as much as you can, come with your comments would really help, because it's not that easy for me to summarize without having a bias of my own opinion, because this is supposed to be, the community's opinion out there, and it will really help me to see what the community as a whole wants, rather than me trying to, impose what I feel should be there out there or not. I did put in a pretty controversial suggestion to have it really low, and I kind of did it to spur conversation rather than actually enforcing it. So I hope that kind of triggered some people to engage a little bit more and give their opinions. And from there, I think
Not hearing you, so
You're cutting out right at the end there, Sabobi. It was a killer write-up, by the way, and I was convinced by your argument to be pretty aggressive on the fees. I don't know about your 1 basis point there at the end or not, but something like in that 5 to 10 range made sense to try and, I don't know, get people really using this platform and understanding the Ren sort of name and what it could provide. Does anyone know if like Max maybe, does anyone know if the team has strong opinions about this kind of stuff, or had a position they wanted to share, or something that would, I know that as a community we get to decide on these things, but sometimes it's nice to wonder where some other folks that are also invested in the Ren world are coming from on this stuff, or is this purely something we have to come up with on our own?
For the burn and min fee, I haven't been involved in any sort of wide team discussion on this. I don't think it's been the biggest sort of worry for us. It's something I think the community is well equipped to figure out, or at least try out. Me personally, like I like something on the lower end so we can experiment with uh, more high volume use cases. Because this doesn't affect the TVL at all. We can go crazy with this. The only concern we had was with the mint to burn fee, because we're trying to, like, in this up to the grape core being launched, we're still sort of in a sensitive phase where, if something were to happen because we screwed up, that's on us. So we don't want to take too many risks, and we want to be responsible. And the Grey Core, when we transition to the Grey Core, that's a risk then we hand over to them, and they will be the first time Grey Core members. There won't be any precedent set for if they screw up, what happens then? Are they at fault? Um, so we also don't want to sort of, oh, hey, here's 10 billion that you're gonna custody, have like have fun sleeping at night. Like, so that's sort of the things the team is thinking about. But for burn and mint fee, there's no, I mean, there's maybe some indirect ways where TVL is affected by how much burn and mints are happening, but I would say that would be marginal, uh, or like we can't even predict that. So I think we should just consider burn and mint as a separate thing that doesn't affect TVL, and from there, what's the best strategy to set the fee? And I think the community should decide what it thinks is the best for the community and the ecosystem, which I think it's a long-term view. The community should take a long-term view here. That we're sort of loading our bags with volume, and then that volume can later, like, that can really sort of grow and turn into more rewards for dark node operators.
I think the point that was discussed on the RFC that made a lot of sense to me was that with a low enough fee and we got enough adoption, we keep talking about wanting to get our name out there and a level of marketing that could speak to a level of marketing and aggressive enough low fee to really get some movement.
Can I share my experience, my opinion on this topic? So just a super short background. I'm involved in a chat with a lot of super experienced DeFi people, and the short version is that RAN is not even on the radar among most users because they are mostly involved with stablecoins, mostly. Um, I just posted in the governance chat the link to the breach aggregator, I guess you could call it, that shows transaction fees from one chain to another for most bridges out there. It's for reference purposes. Just for background, for example, fees from Ethereum to Arbitrum currently are range from 2.5% for small guys to 0.04% for the big amounts. So basically free. Yeah. And for example, Ethereum to Polygon, it's more or less the same. It's ranges from 0.1% to 0.08%. So still cheaper than what we had at all times. Yeah, we had 1.5, 1.5%. That was the smallest fee, I think, that we had for minting. Yeah. Um, from the chats that I've heard, professional guys, arbitragers, traders, farmers, they pay a lot of attention, a lot of it, to the fees that they pay, and they usually choose the cheapest bridge out there. They don't care about safety. They don't care about image. They all they care about is liquidity and how cheap it is. That's basically it. Yeah. That's also for reference. Yeah. Um, what I think that we should do with this is um, basically what Bobby mentioned. Go with the lowest fee possible, provided that we have a great user experience, a great front end already. Basically, I think that we can go something like 3 or 4 or maybe even 6 months of completely free host-to-host bridging, uh, and that can be basically a user acquisition strategy of sorts that would be also tied with some cross marketing. One of the community members in the other chat mentioned it can be done at the same time with some articles on Cointelegraph, CoinDesk, and all that stuff, crypto media, because as I said previously, Ren is not basically on the bridge radar among most professionals, at least in the circle that I'm in. Yeah, and if you pay attention to the link that I've provided, you'll see that some bridges are basically free. Yeah, so uh, there's a big user acquisition war going on, even if it's not talked about, but it is. And I think we shouldn't be concerned with how much DocNotes are earning now. We should be concerned how much DocNotes are earning in 1 year, 2 years, 3 years time, and getting as many people to use our bridge, provided it has a, as I said, a ready UI and good user experience. We should try to get as many people on our platform as possible right now, as soon as possible, because we did have BTC first, but we are we are very very late to the ERC20 and other token party, bridging party. So basically, my opinion is that we should go free for a limited time and mention it in advance that it's a limited time offer. Yeah, basically, and cross advertise it in crypto media. I think that would be a very good, uh, you can say, investment on our part, because we would be paying, I guess, opportunity cost, maybe you can call that. We would not be getting any profit as document operators, but we would be getting a long-term positive effects from getting the most amount of people familiar with RenBridge. So personally, I think that our number one goal is to get as many people as you can to learn and use and try Ren. I've managed to get a couple of people to use Ren Bridge to transfer from Arbitrum that have never used Ren before, and they were very pleased with the experience and with the speed of our bridge. And I think if we can get a large number of users to go for the same experience that my mates did, uh, we'll get a lot of long-term clients on our side, and I think that would be extremely positive for us long-term. But it's definitely a long-term strategy. Yeah.
I just want to jump in. I really agree. I've been using bridges a lot recently, and it's yeah, definitely it can be quite expensive. And when you go for the cheaper ones, I mean, I guess I want to say that the the number of bridges that are out there have been exploding over the last few years. Like there, or not few years, like last few months. That there are a lot of new bridges, a lot of new projects that are building bridges, and a lot of them are really sketchy to use. Like the other day, I was trying to figure out how to uh, get native from native Ethereum from AVAX, and I had to take two different bridges. So I tried out a bunch of different ones, and their interfaces, like some of their interfaces, are just scary. Like I got an error that like I sent some tokens over the bridge, and it just gave me an error. It's like invalid transaction, but then my funds were gone, and 15 minutes later they showed up, but it was just like it was a kind of scary experience. I had to just go like talk to their support, and eventually it went through. But yeah, so there's a lot of projects that are in beta right now. I don't think they have the quality control that Ren does, and so I definitely agree that if we really like get in there and uh, show the quality of the project for at least a few months, that um, so a lot of these bridges that are more established, like multi-chain, um, is there, or what used to be any swap. They're quite expensive to use for a lot of pairs. So I think it would be a good opportunity to do this for at least a few months.
Yeah, listening to RV's experience, I think I tend to agree. Especially if the VM's compute power is still not hooked up to my dark node, and my hosting costs don't have to spike as a result. Hint, hint. But yeah, I was just reflecting on the Ryan Selgis's Masari report, where he was looking ahead to this coming year, and he was saying that this is really going to be the multi-chain year, and then we've heard Vitalik saying that it's not cross-chain anymore, it's multi-chain. There is an explosion of bridge activity, and we are late to the party. So I do agree that if we need to lost lead a little bit and then do some proactive marketing to get out ahead of it and win some market share, that's probably a good idea.
And I have a question for RV. And thank you, Cowboy, also for sharing your experience. I was going back to, I'm on the camp of, if we need to do it for free, absolutely. And I love that the sentiment at least is, hey, let's think about it for the next few years instead of the next quarter. I've been saying in my post for a while, to make a reasonable projection on run success, we need at least 6 quarters. We don't need 2 months. It doesn't work like that in real life, and it doesn't work like that in DeFi either, to see a sustainable trend. But my question, RV, is how long do you think, and I guess just your opinion, right? How long do you think we should make it free? Taking the longevity perspective, right? Ren VM is here to stay, and Ren VM has an amazing differentiator that separates us from I think a lot of the bridges that you just that I was able to see in that link that you provided. So are we talking about 6 months, a year? Just kind of, obviously I'm not in those discourse, but you have a better temperature of what those folks would really need to kind of get that brand loyalty, right? And then they will be okay with paying a premium for what RenVM offers, which is, it's not just easy UI, but I mean, the technology, it doesn't provide those those sketchy feelings when you use other bridges, right? Do you have a feeling on that, whether it should be 2 quarters, 3 quarters, 4 quarters? But I'm all on that count. Let's think of, and I was going back to Longy's comment on the RFC for the RFP, sorry, for when we lower the bridges for the transition to Gray Core. Well, he said technically we want total value transacted, right? And for that, we probably have to go all the way down, right, to single digits. So I love that the sentiment among the community call, it's that we got to head that way. But I would love to hear your opinion on that, RV, if you don't mind.
I definitely think that it should be medium to long term, and medium is being like 3 months, and long term is up to, I guess, 9 months or maybe something like that. But what I wanted to mention as well, that one of the concerns that community members expressed in private talks and other chats was that they are concerned with leaving money on the table, and I uh, heavily disagree with that approach because that's not leaving money on the table, in my opinion. I think that's investing money. Um, as I said, it can be easily written down as a user acquisition cost that we are paying now uh, to benefit long term. And the extremely awesome thing about crypto is that there's no single entity that has extremely large um, expenses that they will have to pay during this period. All our expenses are basically, I guess I can say, diluted among multiple .NET operators, among Ren Labs team, and there's not that much money that we are losing. We are just not making money. And that's a completely different thing to traditional businesses where they actually are losing money because they have to pay payrolls, they have to pay rent, they have to pay maybe hardware infrastructure costs and all that. That's a lot more expensive than $5 DigitalOcean node. Yeah. And the concern about dark node operators deregistering, I think, is not a concern at all, in my personal opinion. Because if some guys do not share the long-term vision, it's not really a concern of the company or the project at this point. Um, because I would love to hear the counter argument that would go against extremely aggressive user acquisition strategy with having extremely low uh, side negative effects and extremely low expenses. We're basically not paying a single cent uh, while we are going to get users to use our platform and get acquainted with it. Because and the reasons for this program promotion to go for a longish time frame is that we want to get as many users as possible. Not everyone bridges day in, day out. Some people bridge once a week. Some people bridge once a month. And we want to get as many of and we want to get as many as DeFi people on board and familiar with our platform as possible. And
Yeah.
don't forget, as Sabobi mentioned, maybe somebody missed it, that we are not making our fees max. We are not making fees super low, free. Yeah, we are only making host-to-host fees free. But if there will be uh, increased liquidity required, people will still have to pay 0.36% mint fee and mint the tokens. Only then they can be moved freely. So we'll still get more than we get currently. That
To
that
your
that
point,
that's a very important thing to mention. I just want to repeat myself because I might sound a little bit gibberish. Um, not English is not my first language, so sorry guys. But I'll repeat it just once. Having 0% host-to-host fees does not imply not having increased RAN bridge earned fees, because once new tokens are um, basically entered the system into the system, um, they will have to be minted first, right? And if users want to exit, they will have to be burned, exit completely. I mean, from a run VM, yeah. So we are definitely gonna see an increase in RAN bridge fees earned, even with having 0% host-to-host fees. That's a very important point to keep in mind when discussing this topic. Yes, Cowboy.
yeah. So on that point that we wouldn't be losing money or that we don't have expenses in this way, the other bridges do, and I think that's really important to consider as well. That our competitors, they're essentially incentivizing liquidity with, and their fees like are part of that equation. And so they, I mean, I can't speak to every bridge, but most of these bridges, because of the way they have to have liquidity on both sides, they have to pay for that liquidity, and so they can't have zero for this kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Having 0% host fees will actually hurt our competitors um, in one way or another. Even if it's minimal, it's good for us. And as I said previously, we are quite a bit late to the bridging party, and I think we should uh, enter the party as aggressive as humanly possible.
Yeah, I just want to echo my agreement. You guys bring up a lot of great points, and I think as dark node operators and community members in general, we should all be focused on the long term, and if that means sacrificing some shorter term profits in order to get a lot more users and just exposure throughout the DeFi ecosystem, and even beyond, bringing people outside of crypto, showing what's possible by combining it with different PR pieces and just getting the word out as much as possible that here's what Ren Bridge and Ren VM is capable of, the value proposition that it can provide users, and yeah, really just trying to expand the word, get the word out as much as possible, and bring users on. And freebies always attracts users. So I think, yeah, just want to echo my agreement that user acquisition over these next several months in such a competitive space, I think that should be the utmost importance. And then can always adjust the fees as time goes on.
Agreed. Yeah, it's a long-term play.
One thing I didn't get much feedback on in the forum post was what kind of voting.
So, Bobby, you're breaking up again.
Something
If I
glitched
could,
with this mic.
if I know where you're going with that, you were talking about the voting on an option rather than some sort of weighting thing that draws two different strategies into the middle where they're both ineffective.
Yes, that's exactly what he was mentioning.
Seconded. I thought that was a great point to bring up, and I'm completely in agreement on that. I don't want this dragged to some strange percentage in the middle that doesn't address anyone's actual strategy selection.
Yeah, I think it should be a single option vote that will be decided upon. So basically, winner take all option. If
RB, do you
anyone
feel like
votes
there's
free,
enough support over there in the forum for your aggressive 0%? So Bobby's, I mean, it was very aggressive, but he came in with 1 basis point, and you're suggesting an even more aggressive 0 basis point. So that might still need some conversation and selling, I would reckon.
Maybe I could
at,
offer having a
at this
nominal
point,
1 basis point fee over 0, just to have the piping in place for fees to be collected by said transactions. It's still going to be cheaper than anything else.
no.
Nothing is more powerful than free.
Yeah,
I think,
exactly.
you know.
Um, having at least a minimum amount, asking at least for a minimum amount, uh, is not free. It's completely different. 4 letters FREE are magical, and they work wonders. And as I mentioned
You're not
previously,
wrong.
with our system, RenVM, the way it works, initially tokens will still have to be minted, and someone will still have to pay our extremely, in my personal opinion, extremely high 0.36, I think it is, percent fee. There can be no ran ETH without it being minted first. So as it, the bridge will get fees, initial minting fees, and they are very high now. And it is some kind of barrier for high volume host-to-host fees, because someone will have to pay out of his pockets very high fees, minting fees, and only then uh, people can benefit from free host-to-host transfers. And to Ranfield's mention, if I think the community is ready for this proposal, my proposal, free transfers, I think no, community is not ready for it. At least the one that I heard talk about this, and we'll definitely have to do some selling on Twitter, on forum, selling of this idea, and I'll definitely make a post myself with a more coherent um, text than my verbals, verbal text. Um, and I hope some of you guys will also help me sell this idea. I think it's a very worthwhile initiative on our part, and it can be the most important thing we have done uh, in regards to RAN.
A couple things, and thank you guys for the combo. I have a question, I guess, for Shilliam. It's good to see you here, Shilliam. Do you have, see, you're doing an amazing post. I saw that the Twitter thread you did on the Ren.js for developers. Obviously, you probably have a better feel of the temperature of the post. Do you have any opinion when it comes to free, FREE? I mean, what do your opinion on what do you think that can do for the marketing, for the post you're doing, and just overall based on your experience? Obviously, you have access to the data, the impressions, and everything. I would love to get your informed opinion on what we're discussing. Obviously, I'm team free as well. I think I don't see it as a lost cost. I see it as an investment of customer acquisition. But from the marketing perspective, you're doing an amazing job, and I'm sure you have data that can give you a reasonable perspective on what you think promoting free versus non-free will do. If you're around, I would love to hear that, if you don't mind.
Showing up.
Can't hear you, actually. Still not hearing you,
I think we got cut off, right?
Well, until he fixes his mic issues, I wanted to ask Max, is to what extent I think it's possible, and to what extent it will be possible um, to synchronize some marketing efforts with the RAN team, in if we get to have zero host fees. Um, yeah, basically that's the question.
No,
Yeah, just to back that up, I think influencer outreach would be important here, and I think it's going to be far more meaningful if it comes from the team than from some nobody members of a DAO. Just speaking candidly.
Yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure RAN team has a lot more contacts with crypto media and crypto big guys than we do. So yeah, question to you, Max.
I mean, crypto media is always difficult because that they actually all take high fees for any publication. But we can definitely synchronize uh, our own
Well,
marketing about that and try it as best as we can to reach out to. I mean, we have contacts with all of our partners, so we can tell them all about the low fees, so they can get interested in building out use cases that benefit from low fees. So yeah,
well,
I
I
mean,
think
definitely we can synchronize on it.
uh, regarding high fees on crypto media, uh, I'm not an expert on this, but and it can be discussed. But I think that that is something that our ecosystem fund can be used for. I guess at least partially, maybe uh, together with the RAN Labs, maybe. What do you think?
Sure, I mean, we can discuss it openly, and if we can get
I
any
mean,
quotes, I mean, always the tricky thing is with crypto media is that they don't want to sort of tell you um, clearly how much it costs, and they might not, even if you try to pay, they might not put it up because of the editor, how they decide when some posts should be put up. It's very, I don't know, it's not clean crypto media. It's not like they just um, announce something because they feel like it. Uh, it's often these sort of weird incentives in the background, which is sketchy. Uh, but we can definitely try to figure something out. And
Well,
the Ren team is uh, we're approaching different sort of PR firms, learning about how they work for catalog, for instance, where when we have to announce something. So we're exploring that right now as well, aside from also looking for a director of marketing. That's also something that we're doing in parallel, which is it's a challenge finding the right people.
well, gotcha. Well, the point was that it goes along with my extremely aggressive idea that we should, ring every bell that's every bell possible, and so that as many people as possible can hear about this. Sure, certainly we'll all do our part on Twitter and our chats, Discords, and maybe hopefully some crypto media will pick the story up on their own. That would be ideal, I guess.
We could see what it costs to get a sponsorship spot on one or two episode of Bankless, or maybe the Defiant. Some of the more blue chip podcast slash YouTube shows. I don't know if we'd want to go to the likes of someone like BitBoy. But I think to be taken seriously, we've got to get some of the big dogs in the media talking about us. Where people can see.
I know we have a Chica crypto manager among our ambassadors,
Mm.
so that's something. So does anyone have any more thoughts on the fees question topic? If not, then I guess we should start selling the idea of free host to host from
I
bridge.
think maybe one final thing, and I think I'm coming over to Team Free here. Provided we have some expectation as to how long that introductory rate is going to be around. Is it 6 months? Is it a year? Well, what do we all think?
Well, I think we should go on the medium part initially, and then we should add like a little bit of more extra free time. It always works well once you. It's basically an upselling. The upselling is the same story once again. It's like a sequel. It works. Um, so something like maybe 3 months plus 3 months initially.
My
And then,
thoughts exactly.
huh? Sorry.
I just said I was thinking the exact same thing. If we're thinking 6 months total, come out initially and say 3 months limited time free host to host, and then tack on another 3 months
Yeah,
after
when
that.
when the time
I like it.
when the time closes, yeah, we announce on the Twitter, official Twitter, Shilling Twitter, my Twitter, I will bank the chats that we are giving another extra 3 months. So generous, come to us. And there's a pretty interesting statistic that we can use to see if this idea works. And the statistic is, I've seen it on one of the Dune Analytics dashboards. I'm not sure I will be able to find it now, but basically, I think it was something along the lines of unique Ethereum addresses that uh, were used with Run protocol. And we can see how high it goes once the promotion starts. I'm not sure if we can also use the unique addresses from all other chains. I'm not technical enough for that, but I think it should be possible. So basically, track the unique users that use RunBridge.
I love it. I mean, I think that ultimately, the more differentiators who can accumulate in this process, that the rent, rent VM product can accumulate in this process, the better. And when the time comes, 3 6 months, that then we just start saying, hey, you're getting this amazing experience and security and blah blah blah. This are then that this is sort of the new fees. I think it makes sense, and I don't really see it from a loss perspective, rather a customer acquisition perspective. That's that will do my part to help spread the word.
I've got one last question to Max. I think last question. Uh, the little bump on this whole marketing strategy idea was, as I mentioned, that tokens initially will have to be minted, and the initial minting fee is pretty high. And I wanted to ask Max, are there any plans from the team side to incentivize the initial minting of host asset?
I think Max stepped out. He posted, "Be right back" in the government
Ah,
chat.
well, yeah. I think it's a given that we are gonna have curve pools, and they will be incentivized to some extent, but I have no idea to what extent. So yeah, initially, for us to have liquidity, we'll need to have quite a lot of tokens minted initially, and to get this free ball rolling, we'll need quite a bit of tokens minted, and we'll get a lot of fees for that with our current 0.36%. I'm not sure uh, how much of a barrier that will be, but it will be some kind of barrier, definitely. And I wanted to ask Max, if not on the call, then later in the chats, um, what kind of strategy, what kind of initiative, incentives we or Ran Labs can provide to overcome the initial minting barrier for high liquidity. Is my question understandable, guys?
Yeah, I think so. If Max had to step out for a minute, you might want to put that in the chat too, just make sure.
Yeah, I'll definitely do that. So, any other thoughts? The call is very long now. I think we should be ending it soonish.
Agreed.
Well,
So, what's left to get this for ready for RIP? I mean, I think deciding on a fee is a pretty straightforward thing that doesn't need to be debated, by governance for weeks. Maybe we nail down a few options. Give it a few more days and get this out to a vote. I think a
It
lot of
definitely
us.
needs
Yeah.
it definitely needs more conversation. Like, I don't think the 0%. There's no headwind over there at the forum on the 0% option or tailwind or whatever. Like I think if that RV's going to post about that, I'm really looking forward to that. And then I think it sounds like several people here who feel that that's the right way to go need to get behind that.
I'm gonna
Get the
speak
word out.
plain. I'm gonna speak plainly once again, because that's the best way I know. There's gonna be some kind of shitstorm after I post that. I'm pretty sure of it. And people will mention these things. They will mention leaving money on the table. They will mention dark notes deregistering, and uh, they will position this as some kind of problem, which is not. And they will also mention reputation, Run VM's reputation. They will mention that it's hack free. They will mention that we should charge a premium on it. Um, this is uh, this is the topics that, on top of my hand, will need to counter at least in one way or another.
We've got to be clear that this is an introductory rate. That
Definitely.
this is not the rate that we are charging. This is a customer acquisition strategy. We thought about this as the best thing to put forward because we are late to the party, and we certainly don't want to be late and expensive.
But I think you have a business background, and I'm pretty sure you know that how many people are not long-term oriented, and the dark node community operators are not all business people. They are not all long-term oriented. So we'll definitely have an uphill battle selling this idea. I hope not, but we might have. Max, are you back? Hello.
Yeah, uh, I think it's getting super late now. I
Yeah.
have to go away.
Do you have 1 minute?
Yeah, 1 minute, quick.
Okay, so I mentioned that we'll have a little, some kind of small barrier with a free promotion, free strategy. And that barrier is the initial minting fee. The tokens will have to be minted initially, and the initial minting fee is very high now, 0.36%. Is there any kind of strategy to overcome, to incentivize people to mint as many tokens as possible so we have a lot of liquidity?
I mean, what do you mean by strategy? I mean, something that the Ren team does, or
Some kind of incentives for run tokens, run pools, so that people will want to mint with this current high fee.
How about free bridging?
I mean, that's one alternative, but yeah, it has to be discussed in relation to our thoughts on TVL and stuff like that. Making quick changes to fees is like that's not preferable for our sort of like safety protocols that we use to. And anytime we push an update to mainnet, we have to be super careful because if you push something uncarefully, you can I mean, you can wreck the protocol. So there's always like testing in place to do any update. So we don't want to do changes too quickly because we can't do that technically.
I didn't mean reducing the fees. I meant like maybe having some extra FTM rewards on Curve on Phantom,
Yeah,
for
I mean, on
example.
some pools, I've mentioned this like many times in different places, so maybe it's a bit unclear. But the strategy on this is we have on some chains we have incentives, on some chains we have to figure something out. On Phantom is, for instance, we have incentives there. We could use it, but yeah, this is a. I think it would take a long time to discuss this.
Okay, okay. So maybe this is something that we should discuss, guys. How we can incentivize the initial minting of host-to-host tokens, if that's a problem. I'm not sure if it will be, but if it will be, we should discuss that.
Yeah, we definitely need to discuss it, I think.
Okay, so I guess that's it. Everybody has to run. It's getting late.
Oh,
Can I
adjourn.
just make a?
Oh, sorry.
Hi guys. Can you hear me, guys?
Yep.
Good, good. Sorry about the technical issues there. I know we don't have time for many questions. I just want to quickly wrap up before everybody goes and just say thank you for all the support that you gave me with the Ren.js thread that I did this week. I did want to ask a few questions, but as I said, I know it's getting pretty late, so I'll probably just save those questions for the next community call. Or if anybody wants to call this week, I'm happy to host a call with other members of the community if Max has got other things that he wants to do.
How about a call next week?
Yeah, I'm happy to host a community call with everyone else if other people just want to have, a sort of unofficial chat with just me or anybody else. That's fine. Max has got
Yeah, I
other
mean,
things to do.
nothing stops us from having, our own calls.
I don't
Yeah, I
think
think that.
I don't
Yeah,
think
there's
we
been a
should.
lot of. Yeah.
I don't think we should end this call like this very minute. I'm very interested to hear your questions. I'm sure there are some people who are interested as well.
I have.
Okay,
Well,
that's fine.
why don't we say that the official call can,
Yeah.
anybody who needs to drop off, we won't hold it against you. But if we'd like to hang out with Chilium for a little while, there's no harm in that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Uh,
or if you want to hang around, you're more than welcome to. Or like I said, I can just arrange another call with everyone else this week. I know Max. I think Max has got other things that he needs to do. Or there's probably other people in the call right now that need to go right now, so they're more than welcome to leave if they want. Is that all? Max, do you need to stay or you need to go?
he mentioned that he needed to go.
Yeah, that's fine. If you want RV, I can just ask the questions and then if everybody just wants to leave, they can just leave whenever. Nobody's obliged to stay or anything. So first of all, it's great to speak to you all. I know I haven't been present for the last few community calls or anything. That should change now. Hopefully, I should be able to take part in every single community call. I originally wanted to ask 7 questions about the DAO and about some of the points that we've raised today. The first question I originally wanted to ask was, what role will the DAO play with regards to the future integration requests? So, let's say in the future Ren's doing really well and we get 5 or 6 integration inquiries every day, and these are projects that really want to integrate with Ren. Is the team or is the Ren Labs still going to have the priority over who integrates with Ren, or will the DAO ultimately be able to decide what sort of integration we prioritize over the others? But I assume that requires a bit of input from Max.
Well, from the previous calls, I've had an impression that long term DAO will have multiple working groups that will handle different aspects, like fund farming, like marketing, and there will certainly be some kind of a working group that will work in close relation to the devs, and
Yeah.
I think it will be like a mutual collective discussion. I think that's the impression that I had from the previous talks. I'm not sure how
Yeah.
valuable that input is to you, but that's what I had in mind.
Yeah, I mean, it seemed to me from what Max had said earlier that right now Ren Labs is kind of driving that stuff, and when the DAO is ready, we could potentially be driving that stuff, and we'll know when that is. But those privileges aren't going to be assigned to us. We've got to sort of be ready and deserving and take the bull by the horns. So, I think for the time being, we'll be looking to Ren Labs for integration and deployment,
Yeah.
and fielding those requests.
I think as part of the the much wider sort of DAO decision making process, I would like to sort of see that eventually integrated into the DAO in the future. Because who ultimately gets to decide whether we can integrate Y finance over X finance, especially when there's multiple projects coming in. But thanks for all your input on that question. My next question was in relation to the Ren Alliance. This hasn't been really discussed in a while, probably for obvious reasons, because there's been a lot of other things going on. Are all the Alliance members still in the Alliance? Have any left, for example? Or this is a good example with the DAO as well, actually. Will future Ren Alliance members be decided by the DAO?
Like I think the concept, like I'm here now, so I mean the Ren Alliance. I mean, I don't think it's really on the table anymore. It's nothing. I mean, it's nothing special in some sense. We allow anyone to integrate and build on top of Ren, and we try to get as many as we can, work together with other partners. The concept of Ren Alliance is sort of fizzled out, I guess. Like there's no council or anything of the big alliance that talk together. Everyone has too much work on their hands, so uh, it's a big ask to like require other partners to sort of meet up in a call every now, because they have tons of other things on their plate as well. So I don't think like the Ren Alliance. Yeah, I mean those people who were in that alliance list. I mean they're still our good friends and partners, and we work together. But it was more like a, how do you say? It was like a a sign of mutual alignment. But there's like nothing really. There's no technical or formal thing anymore. At least there's no like formality around it.
Okay. Do we know if those projects are still going to integrate Ren, or have they just sort of gone off and done their own thing now? Or
I mean, some project there don't even like work anymore. I mean, I don't remember the list, but not all of those projects are maybe functional anymore. Um,
yeah.
it would, yeah, if they haven't, it depends on a case by case basis. So I don't remember the list anymore.
Yeah. Okay, that's
Yeah,
fine. My next question was, Max, is there a deadline for your RFC, the RFC for the community multisig? Is that something that's going to be wrapped up in the next few weeks,
yeah,
or
yeah.
is
We
there an
talked
official
about it.
deadline?
Yeah, we talked about it like an hour ago, I think. So I mean, maximum 2 weeks before we should turn that into a RIP, I think. a real proposal.
Weeks, yeah, that's fine.
Yeah.
So what exactly are we waiting on now? Just as a sort of summary for the multi-sig to kick in, is it the gnosis and the actual vote itself and the RIP? Are those the two things that we're just waiting on now?
We wrapped up the how the multi-sig members are chosen, so we got all the details there wrapped up. I think we'll try to find a way to see that a person has a dark node without doxing their Ethereum address. We won't have like a formal requirement that anyone has to list that. Say with horror. Like I'll try to write a summary soon, but I really have to go now, unfortunately. So I don't know if you guys want to stay on the call and keep talking about. I have to leave. I'll keep the recording going. I'll try to write a summary, and maybe like Renfield or someone who I don't remember who usually likes to do these summaries as well can help me out with all of the things we discussed in the beginning of the call, so I don't forget anything. But we yeah, that yield ups, I think we'll wrap that up pretty soon in 1-2 weeks.
Okay, that's fine. I'm happy to help out with the community call write-up as well.
Yeah, great. Yeah, do people want to stay, or should I end the recording?
Well, I think
I think you can end it, and we'll just stay if we want to, or I don't know. I'm trying to stay.
Yeah, I mean, some of us can stay, and you can just end it for now, Max.
Yep.
And we can just have a open floor by ourselves.
Yeah. So thank you guys for being here. Great community call number 5.
Thank you.